What is up, everyone? It's Thomas and Kodey from Savant here to talk some March Madness. And this has been an exciting tournament. Probably the most I've watched a March Madness tournament in my lifetime. My experience is completely different to Kodey, which we'll get into here in a moment. But I literally locked myself in my room in Williamsburg at my parents' house and just been watching hundreds of hours of basketball. So yeah, I want to hear about your experience, Kodey. You've done Vegas a couple of times now during March Madness, right?
Yeah, so my birthday is was on Monday, and usually it falls over the tournament weekend. So I usually go with my uncles to just watch the first and second round of the games. It's always a great time. You know, the sports books are packed. We were at Caesars, we were at New York, New York, we were at the Venetian, etc., Circa, and what a great atmosphere! Honestly, one of the best tournaments in years, in my opinion, just because of the draft class this year. I think we've got 10 to 15 difference makers that are going to be in the NBA this upcoming year. So lots of fun. Wanted to record a little bit more, do some fun interviews, with people, but so many rules and things got a little cloudy. So it just is what it is. But it's been such a fun tournament so far. I've been having a lot of fun, and I'm excited to talk about the games with you.
What kind of rules are you talking about when it comes to Vegas and recording?
I was like trying to bring in, my DJI camera with in my bag and stuff like that, and they were giving me a hard time and saying, like you're not allowed to record stuff like this and interview people. I did try like once or twice, and I don't think I was, in the right spaces to do that anyways. And I guess it sort of makes sense, but wanted to get some fun content. But maybe next year, who knows?
Yeah. Maybe when this channel becomes official and we're known as a sports channel, they'll let you in and interview whoever the fuck you want. Yeah.
Yeah,
A little Savant badge, Kodey
right.
Savant. That's exciting, man. I've never done Vegas during March Madness. I've always wanted to. My funniest, I think I've told you this, but I'll tell the viewers as well. My funniest experience is I was talking to my friends about taking off for work for March Madness. And the first year we were about to do that was the COVID year where it didn't happen. The tournament didn't happen at all. So I kind of got bit in the wrong way where I wanted to indulge and never got to, and then had a bitter taste in my mouth, so never had. But one of these years, I'll join you in Vegas.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so what stood out to you in the first weekend? Like, which games did you watch the most of?
Yeah. So started really early with like the High Point game, which is something I know we want to talk about. They were a great team for a couple of games, but most of the really exciting games were Florida, Iowa. Watched a lot of Illinois, Vanderbilt, Nebraska was something I really liked, and just keeping up with a lot of the powerhouse teams. I think this year specifically, I thought that because it's such a stacked draft class and there's so much talent right now with like the transfer portal, which I know we'll get to and whatnot, that I didn't think a lot of one seeds would lose, right? I didn't think a lot of the
Hmm.
high seeds would lose in general. I know everybody's usually looking for some sort of Cinderella story here, but with just the talent and the coaching at the top, I didn't really see a lot of upsets happening. And that's kind of how it went for the first round of games. And if anything, the second round was a little more interesting, which is great. But yeah, those are some of the games I was watching.
Yeah, it is so chalky. As a better, I'm learning now that there's no more Cinderella stories. There's very few Cinderella stories. And in the first couple of rounds, you might as well just take the higher seeds. They were all winning by double digits easily. It almost makes you feel like with the transfer portal, they should consider lowering the amount of teams that are getting in to the tournament. I don't know if we need 64 to be honest. It's cool. I mean, it's cool to see like the wagons that are the top seeds look unbeatable and look like great, probably some of the best college basketball teams we've ever seen. But it's interesting where normally I think there were strategies before the tournament where you could just bet all the underdogs in the first weekend and you'd rack up money if only a couple of them won. And now
Mhm.
it's complete opposite. You might as well just take the negative 15 and a half, the negative 9.5s. You might as well back the favorites. And I wonder if that's going to keep continuing or if they're going to mix it up at all.
I think they have to come up with some sort of rule to make this transfer portal a little less of a powerhouse for big name schools. They can just buy players nowadays. You look at somebody like Xavier Lee from a Florida team who just lost. He already is coming to the transfer portal. He was a guy at Princeton or Harvard that was a complete stud. He transferred to Florida to compete for a championship this year, and that obviously didn't happen. And he literally said, and I quote, "I feel undervalued here." And so now probably another huge program is going to go after him. He's a great point guard, a good playmaker, but it just does make this tournament a little bit more difficult for smaller schools to compete and even keep up. It just makes it that more impressive when they win.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You're just looking at these one seeds as like who's going to stop these guys? Some of them look like they can compete against the Brooklyn Nets, for Christ's sake, right? Like
100%.
they can
Yeah.
compete with. So I hope something changes over the years, but for now it is what it is, and it's still been a fun tournament.
That is hilarious. That the Gators won last year. I mean, obviously didn't get what they wanted this year, losing the round of 32. Off some really just last minute missed defensive plays, the two threes that happened towards the end of the game from Iowa were the difference in the game. Otherwise, Florida would have won that. It's hilarious that Lee came there, is pissed off that he didn't get back to the championship and is already moving. Like, you might as well just stay put. The Florida's going to be around for the next couple of years.
I think his usage, like if you watch the game, he didn't have the ball in his hands as much as I would think, and I think he wanted to be more of the engine for that team, and when things pivot, it just is what it is. So I don't necessarily blame him, but I'd be super interested to see what kind of team he goes to moving forward.
Yeah, me too. That's exciting. Again, I only watched the highlights of that game, but he's the one that like stood off the page the most. Every time he had the ball in his hands, he was making a highlight play.
Hmm.
So Florida, Iowa, the other one that I watched a ton of that was just so fun to watch was Vanderbilt, Nebraska. Pretty much a home game for Nebraska. Both first rounds, it seems like they got up for it. The fact that they got their first win ever in NCAA tournament play was awesome. And then all the fans kept flooding into OKC for that Vanderbilt game. And honestly, I was impressed with Vanderbilt. The start of the game, it was deafening loud because again, every fan in there was on Nebraska, and Vanderbilt, you know, took that wave and then dealt with it. I think they were down in by 7.5. And in the second half, they completely controlled. They were literally controlling it. They got the lead. It looked like they were never going to vanquish the lead. And then, the team of destiny, that Cinderella vibe, even though it's a 4 seed, Nebraska eventually just hit necessary shots and got the win. But even though Nebraska's moving on, and we'll talk about them a little bit later for the previews, I was very impressed with Vanderbilt. I don't know if you've seen a lot of this, the guard Tanner, but he was just like picking everyone's pocket. He was dunking on people. He's only 6 foot tall. He was I got to figure out if he's a freshman or sophomore. I imagine he's not going to the NBA draft just yet because he looks smaller in stature. But I was wildly impressed. He was not phased at all by that environment, and it was almost a home game for Nebraska.
Yeah, honestly, their guard play was amazing. I only got to catch like the middle to the end of that game, but I know exactly Tanner who you're talking about. Just a pesky guard who knows how to run an offense, but also play defense. Which two-way player when you're that small, I think you need to be right. So when you're that size, so something that I didn't catch until the end, I just heard because they try to do the half court shot or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was at the end of the game, and I was like, what's going on? As I was watching a different game, but. What a great game and just part of the madness, and it's awesome to see just kind of these lower name players kind of rise from the ashes and become notable players, and maybe make their way into the NBA drafts in the years to come, if not this year.
Yeah. No, that shot was in and out. They were all ready to erupt and get that game winner, and it literally went in right back out. You could see the Nebraska players were like holding their head as they saw that shot go up. They're like, "Oh no, we just got fucked." But yeah, didn't have enough, and it's fun. I again alluded to. We'll get to the preview, but like Nebraska just feels like one of these teams where call it the universe, call it whatever you want. They just seem like they got the vibe going right now, and they're hitting their stride at the right time.
Yeah, can agree with you there.
And then yeah, High Point. I know you touched on High Point a little bit. I was looking up their schedule. I think they put up like 80 points in both games.
Honestly, I was extremely impressed. That were some of the first games that I saw right when I landed in Vegas in the morning. I wanted to get there Thursday to catch the first games, and High Point was impressive. Their guard play was like NBA guard play, right? They look like the Warriors a little bit, just chucking up shots from deep and being aggressive on defense. And they had a 15.5 point spread after beating Wisconsin, which I thought was crazy. That was one of the bets that I took over the weekend. And even though Arkansas is a very good team, you could see the potential in the program, and I think they're very well coached. And it'd be funny to see if somebody like a Xavier Lee ends up going to a program like a High Point, who's like picture perfect kind of style for them, right? A lot of shooting, a lot of ball movement, dribble and kickouts and stuff like that. But impressive team, really fun to watch them, compete in these games so far. And a team I'll definitely remember, I think, for the years to come. They got a lot of young guys who should be back in their program for the next couple of years.
Yeah, they were incredible. Yeah, I just looked up. They scored like 83 and then 88 against Arkansas. That offense was elite. I think it's one of the best offenses we've seen in the tournament so far. And they were not scared at the moment. They were not scared of these bigger teams. They were down to push the ball. Even Arkansas, who's arguably a top 5 offense, and High Point maybe is a top 10, at least looked like a top 10 in this tournament. They were not afraid to run and gun with them. They were like, all right, you're going to make your shots. Well, we're going to make just as many shots. I don't know who the
Mhm.
guy's name is, but 99, he was just one of those sharp shooting 3-pointers that literally every time he caught the ball, he was shooting for super deep and you just knew it was going in.
I think there was a stat that he only had one 2 point, make the entire tournament or something. Like he only shot threes. So I mean, in college specifically, that run and gun offense, just take the threes. They're all trying to switch to this fast paced NBA style. And it's fun to see, especially if you're hitting your shots, right? It's fun to see when you kind of see a Cinderella underdog team like this compete, simply because they're a great shooting team, right? They're a great shooting team, and they're waiting for other teams to make mistakes, and they know they'll knock down their shots. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah. Kudos to High Point. That's probably the only other. I mean, give credit to Texas. I know me and Cody haven't watched a lot of Texas. They are technically a Cinderella story, an underdog, got hot at the right time. But if you look at Texas's schedule, NC State's pretty weak. Gonzaga didn't have their best player. BYU didn't have one of their best players. I think they kind of got a pass in the first couple of rounds. So give kudos to that. But I again, like we just touched on, I think because the tournament is so chalky now, it was cool to see a team like High Point that just came out of nowhere at us, I think a 13 seed and compete with these big dogs and did not look phased. So very impressed there. What games are you looking forward to the most? Which games do you feel like you got a good read on?
I think I'll start with a hometown team here. I'm from Illinois, so I want to talk about Illinois and Houston. I think Houston is the better team. The spread is 3, I think, Houston -3, which I think is a fair number. Illinois got a lot of good guard play with, one or two big guys in the middle. And Houston's defense, people are saying, is kind of fallen off a little bit, but statistically, they're still the number 4 defense in the country. And Illinois likes to take, I think, more than half their shots are 3-point attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And strictly speaking, the Houston perimeter is pretty good historically, right? So I think it's going to be a great matchup between just, perimeter teams, both offensively and defensively. And I want to pick my Fighting Illini, but I don't think I can. They haven't beat Houston in a while, and Houston's very well coached. You know what you're going to get out of them almost every tournament. I think in the past 5 years, they've been very competitive, and they have a style, right? They kind of wear you down. They play great defense, and they really make you beat them by shooting perimeter shots. And it's just who's going to have the hotter night, right? So that's going to be a great game. I'm really excited for that matchup. I do think Houston probably covers. I'd maybe just take their money line if I was a betting man, but I think it's going to be a great matchup between two great teams.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was afraid you were going to take Illinois there. I know a lot of people were taking Illinois when it came out at 3.5. I do kind of agree with that take. It seems like it's going to come down to the last shot, but I don't think a lot of people are factoring that this game is going to be played in Houston, which is unfortunate for Illinois, but going to be one of the best games to watch. I took the -2.5 on Houston. I don't feel great about it. Like you alluded to, I wanted the money line. I was hoping to get a pick 'em, and I would have took Houston there. So not one of my favorite bets of the upcoming games in the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, but going to be an exciting one to watch.
100%. How do you feel about the Nebraska Iowa game? I wasn't able to catch Nebraska very much this past weekend, but I was able to catch Iowa. So I'm curious on how you feel about the Nebraska team as a whole.
Yeah, Nebraska again has not like jumped out of the TV through the stat sheet to me. First game, very easy win. A lot of emotion in that game, right? Trying to get your first ever NCAA win. So it was still impressive. Like I talked about the Vanderbilt game, I felt like if that was truly neutral, Vanderbilt probably wins that game. But because it was majority Nebraska fans, I think they had that in their back pocket. But again, this team kind of feels like a team of destiny. I know it's a weird thing to say, but they just feel like they got that NCAA tournament vibe where they're just hitting their stride at the right time. So to answer your question, I don't think there's a lot of if you're betting, I don't think there's a lot of value on either side, and that's shown with the spread. I think the spread started at 3.5, and again came down to I think now Nebraska money line's like semi bettable at -130. I want to be on Nebraska. I want to pull the trigger on Nebraska. If that comes down to like -20, I might take it just because that's who I want to win. But I don't think necessarily there's any edge in this game.
I can agree with you there. I think Iowa was very great situationally against Florida coming down to the wire. So I didn't think they did anything spectacular. They shot less than 30% from three, missed a ton of free throws, only shot 60%. Honestly, they got good guard play. They have guards who like to rebound, who know how to pass. I don't think their interior presence is anything too scary, which makes me think that Florida has, or sorry, that Nebraska could have a slight advantage on that. But I think it's going to be a grinded out game too. I don't think I really have a good take on, if I were to pick somebody, but it should be an entertaining game. I like that you think Nebraska has like the look and feel of a team who goes deep into the tournament. Sometimes that's all you need is like kind of that
Hmm.
feel. I think Iowa just stayed very competitive, and then they had good coaching near the end, which kind of took them over the top. One thing you could say is that they had a little bit of a clutch factor, right? Florida would go on a couple runs, 7-0 run. I think they went on another 8-0 run, 2, 3 big runs in the game, which I know basketball is a game of runs, but to be able to fight back and claw your way back and kind of, get the other team in foul trouble and whatnot is important. And they don't really turn over the ball very much either. So I think they kind of have a few things going for them. And we'll just see. I think it'll be another fun matchup. I'm very excited for the next round of games. I think it starts getting really intense moving forward.
Yeah. So Iowa and Nebraska, they're in the same division, so they see each other a ton. Of the last 4 games they played each other, 2 of those games went to overtime. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that. Where I agree. The thing that I saw of Iowa is they let Clemson back in the game, they let Florida back in the game, but they weathered that storm, and then they still got the win. Nebraska's similar, right? Vanderbilt, they let Vanderbilt back in the game, but then they eventually, even with Vanderbilt with a 4-point lead late in the game, were able to get the baskets they needed to come out with the win. So yeah, these are both two teams that are similar. They're going to slow the play down a lot, play a lot of half court, and it's probably going to come down to one shot, one play. I do like the coach's son on Nebraska, Hoiberg. He has been just fighting. He'll get like an offensive rebound randomly when he shouldn't be amongst big dudes, and just making that very necessary play. So that could be a little bit of an X factor, but again, it's going to be tight. What do you think about
Yeah.
the St. John's Duke game? I think that's another good one to talk about.
That one I think is going to be an extremely exciting game. Duke's semi hurt, right? They obviously have Boozer, but some of their wings are not 100% right now, playing through some injuries. I think they're a top, obviously a 1 seed. I thought they looked better so far in the tournament than I kind of thought.
Hmm.
Obviously, Siena, not too crazy. TCU, I thought most people thought that would be a closer game. And they blew them out of the water, right? So I think the mixture between Duke kind of being able to slow down the pace of a game and work their offense and kind of get paint touches and easy backdoor cuts and whatnot, compared to a St. John's team who's stifling on defense and they just chuck up a bunch of threes. It's a fun matchup of opposites. It feels like. I think Duke probably takes it very slightly, but I think it's going to be an amazing game. Good for St. John's, just showing who they are, being able to beat Kansas, right? Ruining Darren Peterson's dream, who everybody thinks is going to be a number one overall pick or at least a top 3 pick in this year's draft. I think it's going to be a wonderful game. I think Duke has a slight advantage, just size, physicality, rebounding, right? That's going to be a big one, especially if St. John's is not hitting their shots, but I think they will be. So, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, both very strong defensively. The stature of Duke is just like we talked about. It's just one of those teams that looks like an NBA team across the board, which is scary. But St. John's also looks like they're just playing with fire. It looks like they're a little bit pissed off about last year. I know losing to Arkansas, and that was an upset in Patino's first year at St. John's. So looks like they got a little bit of some motivation in their belt. They kind of got screwed with the seeding because of the division. They've only really played teams like UConn, haven't really played a lot of non-conference play. But I kind of think they're live. I agree with you. I think Duke is definitely the better and superior team. But we've already seen Duke struggle against Siena. You could even argue that the TCU game was closer than the score eventually indicated, because I think TCU was up with like 10 minutes left. I think they took a 2-point bucket to take the lead, like 54-52. And then Duke just kind of like hunkered in, did what they needed to, stifle TCU. We've seen TCU go on droughts, and even in the first game that they won by like 2 points on a game winner, they were up by double digits, and then they went on a complete scoring drought. So I kind of feel like Duke got away with some things so far. So I don't think we've seen Duke's best fastball. I'd be curious if now with 3 days rest and getting some of their players back, obviously a ton of NBA talent on that team, if they can beat up on an inferior conference. But yeah, I what do you think about the spread? I think it opened at 7. It's like sitting at 6.5. What would you lean on that?
Yeah, honestly, the one thing I was looking at is the over. The total is 141. I think that's pretty healthy for a college basketball game, but not for a St. John's team. I think they could really up the score a little bit. I think they're assuming Duke's physicality and defensive presence might slow this game down a bit. I wouldn't mind taking St. John 6.5. You're kind of you're getting me fired up about that, and so it's something that I'm excited about. I really think it's kind of how they're going to play interior against Duke, right? I'm not worried about how they play on the perimeter. It's really about, are they going to, stop the backdoor cuts, not allow easy layups and dunks and stuff like that, and staying off the foul line too, right? That's going to be a big one. I think Duke's going to try to be very physical with them, drive and try to take difficult shots and get foul calls against them. I'm leaning St. John's plus 6.5 at this point.
Cool. I'm glad you said that because that is something I bought earlier. I wish I got the 7. I missed that, but I got it on the 6.5, and I feel good. I feel like 2 possessions a lot to lay for a Duke team that's playing subpar and a St. John's team that looks like they got some fire in their eyes. I mean, I don't know what else to say. This team looks like they're hungry. What about the Arkansas Arizona game?
So I wasn't able to watch a bunch of the Arkansas game. I think Arizona might be the most put together team in the rest of the tournament. They just rebound so well. They make you take really difficult shots. They have NBA talent on their team, right? There's a lot to like, and really what I think it is it's they just don't give you easy chances. They don't turn the ball over. They're a very disciplined team. They out rebound you like crazy. They're huge,
Mm-hmm.
ginormous team. So
Yeah,
I think that's obvious an advantage. So I think Arizona takes it. Let me see what the spread is here.
it's eight
If
and a
I'm
half, open at 9.5. I think actually it might be 7.5 now. I think it's went
half
down two
now.
points.
Yeah. That's a pretty high total. It's sitting at 165.5 right now. I would probably take the under, and I'd probably take the Arizona spread on that if I had to pick. I think Arkansas, as long as they put some pressure on Acuff, right, double team him. I feel like what I've watched so far, because he's an ascending player in the NBA draft, and so I've been curious about his tape. Is a lot of teams are just like letting him beat them, and they're trying to make
Mm-hmm.
everybody else beat them. And I think that Arizona specifically will find a way to make Acuff be a little quieter and actually, have him kick the ball out more, try to do interior stuff. And that's just not going to work against the Wildcats. So I like Arizona in this one. I'm proud of Arkansas from the work they've done. I just think Arizona is too much of a powerhouse at this point.
Yeah. No, I see that. I did take. I felt like 8.5 was a little high, but I see what you're talking about because Acuff is the engine, and the other teams were just letting Acuff kind of have his way, which was an interesting defensive strategy. I imagine the Arizona coach and team is a little smarter than that, especially with 3 days prep. So maybe not feeling as good about that bet that I took, but it just seemed similar to what we're talking about. It's just like in this second round, especially because we've seen so many favorites cover. Anytime I was seeing like an 8 or 9 or a 7 pop up, it just felt like I had to take the dog because again, I feel like most of these teams belong here. But if Arkansas is not hitting their shots, then they're completely screwed because they rely completely on their offense and they're not going to stop Arizona. Arizona's going to get what they want. If Arkansas cannot keep pace, I do agree this could get ugly. So maybe I end up hedging this bet a little bit and maybe bet a little heavier on some other games.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good matchup. Guess we'll just see. I'm glad we
Yeah,
have different things. We can't always have the same take. So
no,
that
absolutely.
just means for a more exciting game, definitely.
No, I'm excited to see how this one plays out. I'm glad you're bringing this up, right? Because when you're doing research on bets, you just have like your point of view,
Mhm.
and it's easy to be like, "Oh, I see it this way," so obviously that's how it's going to go. But I think you bring up some great points. I think Arizona they did also flash on the tape. I think offensive, defensively, they're scary. They're one of the 1 seeds that I do feel good about alongside Michigan. But Calipari is scary. Calipari on the other side is interesting.
Yep, I can agree with you there.
All right, so last thing, I know this is a stacked draft coming up, right? Of college kids coming into the NBA. That's why we're seeing so many teams in the NBA tank harder than ever. You got the Pacers who are just in the championship and they're holding out every starter possible in the fourth quarter. And I see why, because there's so much talent. So remaining talent you've seen beforehand, maybe their team got kicked out. What stood out to you the most? Who's catching your eye?
Yeah, well, the one thing I definitely want to say is, according to CBS, the top 10 picks are all freshmen, 19 years old, 18 years old, almost about to be 20 years old, which I just think is insane. These athletes are coming out bigger, stronger, and better than ever, which is awesome. I'll talk about the remaining talent here. I think Cameron Boozer's solidified himself as a top 3 pick, just depending on fit. 24 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. He's an engine. Kingston Fleming's from Houston. He's 6'4", 190, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Like, they get these guys the ball and they expect them to make a lot of plays, which I think is why they're so valuable. Keaton Wagler from Illinois, 6'6" freshman who is basically, I think, going to run the point in the NBA. He's 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. I mean, these guys are just filling the stat sheet, making the right plays for their team. I'm really excited to see Acuff. Acuff has, I think, made his way up into the top 5 picks
Hmm.
in this year's draft. He's just a scoring machine. He's very efficient, 6'3", 190. It's hard to picture him playing point guard in the NBA. I think he's more of a combo guard, and so I think his limited size might affect him. Right, 6'3" is just not going to get it done in most instances, but he does pass the ball. He's almost averaging 7 assists, but when you watch him play, it's really like a lot of self isolation / creation, and then he will find the open man, which I think is just making the right play. Right, so really excited. Just, there's Burries, there's Lendenberg, there's so many players who I think we could continue to talk about, but I'm excited to see who kind of shoots their way up the draft board because, as these team wins, I think is more scouts, more eyes get onto these players. So more than anything, I just think it's the coolest class. That's really why I wanted to go to Vegas this year. It's like the coolest class I've seen in maybe a decade plus, right? So just super excited and happy about how the tournament's gone so far. And hopefully my Bulls get somebody that's a difference maker. We desperately need it.
Who would you like to see the Bulls draft? Is there anyone specific?
I think we desperately need a big, defensive big who can just catch lobs, actually play some defense and pick and roll, and do their job. So Jaden Quaidance from Kentucky, I know he's kind of hurt this year, but he's basically, I can picture him being a double-double machine in the NBA. I like Burries as well from Arizona, more as like a combo guard to play alongside Giddy. I think he's just a shot maker, but he also gives a crap on the boards, right? He rebounds, he's averaging 6 boards a game. Just somebody who cares on defense and can make some shots, right? Some easy shots either at the rim with some like lobs or layups or dunks, or can hit, some shots and be a nice complementary piece to an engine that we already have in Josh Giddey.
Yeah. You guys got to get rid of some guards if you're going to draft another guard. For the love of God, your free
I know,
agency was insane.
I know, which I hope we do. I don't see us keeping any of the guys that we have really. Besides Buzelis and Giddey, honestly, are the main two we build around. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's exciting. I want to see where that big dude goes on Michigan. I forget his name. Is it Luxembourg?
I think you're talking about their center, Mara. Yeah, he's 7'3" center. He's apparently supposed to go in the top of the second round, but that'd be something the Bulls pick in the top of the second round. I'd love to pick him in the top of the second, right? We just need big bodies. You see some of their games translate pretty well, like a Donovan Clingan or somebody like a Zach Edey who, are just making their way. There's still space in the league for a classic NBA big man.
Yeah, 100%. He's a little goofy. I'll give you that. He looks like someone that maybe needs to work on his footwork and maybe is just getting away with the fact he's taller than everyone else in college and can just dunk on everyone. That doesn't quite work for the NBA. We've seen that flop so many times, like people taking that as like a number one pick. Ray Godin is coming to mind, but a doofus. But yeah, I don't know if it's just the Michigan team and how they're flowing right now, but everyone looks good right now on that Michigan team.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to see if Rob Martin on High Point is entering the draft. He's a senior. I know he's a short king. He's only like 5'10". Obviously, that doesn't quite work, but I mean, we're seeing some talented guards that are short that, come undrafted and sneak onto a team and make a name for himself. And if you can play with the big dogs in NCAA tournament, I think that's as clear as a sign as anything. I mean, we saw Steph Curry. Everyone thought Steph Curry was undersized, and look what he did in the tournament, made a name for himself. And then he's just, one of the greatest shooters and point guards of all time. So, not saying Rob Martin is going to that level, but he really stood out in this tournament and made a name for himself. So, I hope a couple of NBA teams took note of that because I feel like he deserves at least a shot.
I think so too. I don't know if he's coming out this year. I think he maybe has decided that he's already going to go back, but he's a playmaker, which I think you have to be when you're that small. You need to make shots first of all. You got to hustle on defense. You need to make the right play. I kind of think of like a Peyton Pritchard type, or just a small guard who at least can average 4 or 5 assists a game, and you can trust them to play high quality minutes against. Maybe the next wave of players are guys his size anyways, right? We're seeing a lot of guards 6'5", 6'4", 6'3", who are supposed to go top 10, top 15 in this draft. So I think it's a new wave of players coming, and I'm excited because it seems that they can do everything, right? They can pass, they can dribble, they can shoot, and hopefully a lot of them can play defense, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. That is something that is lacking in the NBA and
Yeah.
definitely in college. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's a wrap on the first weekend of March Madness. Like we talked about, we are pumped for this next set of games. I think we're going to make a series out of this, so we'll have some more input for you, maybe more draft stuff to talk about. Do one next week, then maybe even after the Final Four and the championship, we'll wrap it up with a third one.
Yeah, guys, if you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Share it with a friend. Give us your take in the comments below. We're excited to talk ball. This was a lot of fun, Thomas. Thanks for getting this all together, and I'm really excited to see the rest of the tournament.
Same, man. Let's have some fun.